What's going on, guys? It's Sway, and here's why I downgraded from a Canon to a Leica. Now, I know some of you saw this title and you're ready to come for my life in the comments, but please give me a couple minutes and it's all going to make sense, so put your pitchforks down. Now, I'm sorry, but on paper, the Leica SL2-S is a downgrade coming from the R5. I'm going from a 45 megapixel sensor to a 24 megapixel sensor. I'm going from being able to shoot 8K RAW internally to only being able to do 4K log internally. I am also going from having a flippy tilty screen to one that does not flip nor tilt. I'm also going from a phase detect autofocus system, probably one of the best on the market, to contrast-based system. Actually, why the fuck did I buy this camera again? So this is actually the second SL2S that I've owned. I had one previously at the beginning of 2022, and then I sold it shortly after, and I've missed it since. Now, yes, this camera is a downgrade when you're coming from the R5 when you compare spec sheets. And yes, the R5 was also easier to use, but I think as a creative, ease of use shouldn't be at the forefront when you're creating. Being creative should be. Now, after all that, you're probably thinking, why even buy this camera? Well, the first one, just because your pitchforks are already out, the camera is cool as fuck. Now, I saw a video from a creator on YouTube, goes by the name of GX Ace, where essentially what he was saying in the video is having a cool camera will make you a better photographer. The point that he was trying to make, or at least the way that I had interpreted it, is that when you have a camera that's cool that you enjoy using, it makes you want to create more, thus making you a better photographer, right? The way this camera feels in your hands, the build quality, the weight of it, the shutter sound. Actually, hold on a second. I'm gonna let you hear the shutter sound real quick because this is cool as hell. The microphone is down here. All right, I just wasted like 20 shutter actuations, but did you hear how crisp that shit sounds? Come on, that's cool as hell. But all in all, the experience of using this camera is far more enjoyable to me than it was shooting with the R5. But besides the fact that this camera is a sexy beast, something on it would actually have to be an upgrade functionality-wise, or I never would have bought this thing again. The post workflow, first of all, is much smoother with this than it was with the R5. Canon has this god-awful codec, which even if you have a really spec'd out laptop, it's pretty hard to work with. I have currently a 2020 MacBook Pro. Is fully spec'd out. I pretty much slid everything to max settings. It's the last of the Intel MacBooks. If I put any of the log footage, whether it's the 8K RAW or just the regular log files in the timeline, the thing chugs along, so essentially I have to, every time I offload footage, I have to generate optimized media or make proxies in DaVinci, which then adds another 2 to 5 hours in my workflow. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, just add 2 to 5 hours, but if you're shooting 3, 4, 5 times a week, and then that's now 2, 3, 4, 5 hours every single day, you're wasting about a whole entire day worth of work because you can't really use the laptop during that time. You can, but you're only going to slow down the time it takes to optimize the media. So that was one of the drawbacks of having the R5. These files are way easier on my laptop. I can pretty much just shoot the log files, drop them straight into the timeline, and just plug away and do all my color work without having to worry about anything. And speaking of editing, I don't know if this is the Leica look, but pretty much the way that this camera happens to render color is exactly the way I guess I'd want my eye to see the end image, which only makes the post workflow a lot easier because now I'm doing a lot of less pulling and adjusting colors and hues and all that other fucking fancy shit just to make the image look how I wanted it to look in the first place. This alone makes the Leica an upgrade to me from the R5. I always say the argument over which camera manufacturer is the best or whatever is kind of pointless, because essentially all these cameras that once they're around the same exact like $2,000-$3,000 plus price point, they're all really fucking good. None of them are bad. It's essentially, I say you should just buy the camera that gets you closer to the look that you're trying to get in the end, which the Leica does for me. Now, don't worry, I'm not one of these Leica fanboys that's going to sit here nut riding Leica the entire video. There are definitely some things I do not like about this camera. One, the lack of an articulating screen. Now, I know some people will say that they have it in here just to maintain the fact that the build feels so solid, which it does. This camera literally feels like you can just throw it at somebody, it's going to eat it, and the camera will be perfectly fine. But also, the camera came out at the end of 2020, so let's just call it 2021 because it was literally December for the release date. Everyone and their mother has a fully articulating screen, or at the very least just one that can tilt up and down. Because now without that, if I want to get a low angle shot, I'm either squatting all the way to the floor or I'm hunched over like the Hunchback of Notre Dame just so I can get a good angle. So it's not a make or break thing for me, but it is really, really fucking annoying. Second thing I don't like is the fact that this camera uses contrast-based autofocus. Now, why manufacturers are still holding on to the system when the majority of the competition is all using phase detect autofocus, which we know is faster and more accurate, I will never know. Now, this isn't the biggest deal for me because the majority of the time that I'm shooting video, I'm pulling focus manually, so it's not the biggest deal. But in scenarios like this where I'm filming myself, it would be nice if I had a reliable autofocus system to use if I decide to move back and forth or get a little excited on camera. especially because of the fact that I do not have a flip out screen on this. I wouldn't be able to verify if I'm in focus, so I'd end up shooting something like this, going back to look at the footage and realize, oh fuck, I'm blurry the whole time. Gotta redo the whole thing. So yeah, not having phase detect autofocus, no. Third thing I don't like is the fact that there is a crop when you go into 60 frames per second on this. Now, this is not the big deal for me because of the fact that 99% of the time I'm shooting 24 frames per second, but on those off times when I do happen to use 60 frames because I want some buttery slow-mo, it would be nice if I could use the full sensor and not have to readjust my whole framing now because of the fact that there's a crop. And number 4, the Leica tax. What do I mean by Leica tax? I mean the fact that a battery for this camera costs $285. Hold on a second. This. See this? See this right here? It's not like a crazy big battery. It doesn't have insane battery life. It's just literally a regular ass battery. It's not anything. It's not bad. It's also not good. Why it costs $285? Leica tax. This also goes for a bunch of the other accessories. I think the battery grip, among a bunch of other things, are all priced about 3 or 4 times as much as the equivalent accessory for any of the competition from Canon, Sony, Panasonic, and any of those brands. Now, yes, I know what I was getting into. You got to pay to play, but it's just kind of fucking annoying. But once again, obviously it's not the biggest gripe because I bought the camera. Now, these complaints are all relatively small and none of them are deal breakers. If they were, I would not have bought this camera twice. But this video was based on me switching from the R5 to the Leica, so I had to mention them. And now to wrap this whole thing up, yes, I was able to get some great shots with my R5, but the experience was only enjoyable through either my client interactions or the shots that we got. Using the R5 in and of itself was never fun, it was just efficient. And as an artist or creative, I don't think being efficient should be our #1 priority. Being creative should be. And I personally feel like the Leica SL2-S allows me to be more creative than the R5 did. Now, yes, I might have to work with this camera a little bit more than I had to work with the R5, but I enjoy the whole process now. I actually enjoy creating again. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions or suggestions for future content, leave them in the comments down below. Once again, I'm Sway, and I'll see you in the next one.